Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something pretty fundamental to, well, how we all work. Or sometimes, how we don't quite manage to get things done effectively.
Right. We're diving into these two really distinct ways people structure their workdays.
Mm.
You've got the manager schedule and the maker schedule.
And figuring out the difference and, the friction between them,
Yeah.
that can honestly be a bit of a game changer for focus, for productivity.
Absolutely. And I think everyone's felt that frustration, haven't they? Being pulled in 10 directions at once.
Hmm.
Charles Dickens actually nailed it way back when.
Oh, what did he say?
He wrote, "The mere consciousness of an engagement will sometimes worry a whole day." And that just perfectly captures how knowing something is looming can fragment your attention.
That really hits home. Okay, so let's unpack these two schedules then. First up, the manager schedule.
Okay. This is probably the one most people think of as like a standard office day, especially for folks in leadership roles.
Yeah, the day's sort of sliced up, right? Into hours, maybe even half-hour slots, filled with meetings, calls, quick check-ins.
Exactly. And the structure itself makes it super easy to book things. You need to talk to someone,
Yeah.
just look for an open slot, pop it in the calendar.
It's kind of built for that constant coordination, keeping lots of different plates spinning, quick decisions, responsiveness. That's the vibe.
It's efficient for that kind of work.
Yeah.
Managing people, projects, that sort of thing.
Okay, so that's one side. Now, the other side of the coin, the maker's schedule.
Right. And this is for anyone who needs those big, uninterrupted blocks of time to do, deep work.
Like, what kind of work are we talking about?
Oh, programming, writing, design work, maybe complex analysis,
Yeah.
scientific research.
Yeah.
Anything where you really need to get your head down and focus for a long stretch.
So not just an hour here or there. We're talking like half a day, maybe more.
Yeah, ideally. You need that time to really sink into the problem, get into that flow state.
And this is where the clash happens, isn't it, when these two schedules interact?
Precisely. Because for someone on that maker's schedule, a meeting isn't just a quick pause. It can completely derail things.
Oh, so.
Well, imagine you're deep in code or drafting something complex, finally making headway, and then boom, calendar alert, meeting in 15 minutes.
Right. Your focus is just shattered.
Exactly. It breaks that big productive block into these smaller, much less useful chunks. It's like you were building something intricate and someone just knocked it over.
The original source material we looked at uses this great analogy as a meeting can throw an exception for a maker, like in programming.
Yeah, I love that phrase. It's not just stopping one task and starting another. It's a forced context switch. You have to mentally prepare for the meeting, participate, then afterwards, you've got to somehow find your way back to where you were.
And that takes time, right? It's not instantaneous. You can lose, what, half an hour just getting back into the groove?
Easily.
Yeah.
Sometimes longer. And there's another sort of subtle effect, too, the cascading effect.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you know you've got, say, a 1-hour meeting smack in the middle of your afternoon,
Uh-huh.
you might look at your morning and think, well, I only have 2 solid hours now. Is it even worth starting that really big, ambitious task?
So knowing your afternoon is broken actually demotivates you from starting something substantial in the morning.
Exactly. It creates this kind of anticipatory drag.
Mm-hmm.
You end up maybe doing less demanding tasks instead because you know you won't get that deep, focused block later.
I think listeners can probably relate to that. Have you ever looked at your calendar, seen that meeting coming up later, and just felt your energy kind of seep away beforehand?
Totally. It's that feeling of knowing your flow is going to get fractured.
So it's important to stress neither schedule is inherently good or bad. They're just
Yeah.
different, suited for different kinds of work.
Absolutely. The manager's schedule works for managing. The maker schedule works for making, for creating. The problems really start when they collide without awareness.
And there's often a power dynamic involved, isn't there?
Yeah, that's a key point. Often, the people in management roles who naturally operate on that manager schedule.
They're the ones setting the meeting times.
Right. And they might schedule meetings without really grasping the huge cost it imposes on someone who needs those long stretches of quiet focus.
Yeah.
It's usually not intentional malice, just a lack of perspective on the other way of working.
So this brings up a really interesting question about how workplaces can actually function better, knowing this difference exists.
Exactly. How do you get these different styles to coexist productively? And our sources actually gave a fascinating example. Y Combinator.
Oh, the startup accelerator.
Right.
Now, you'd think venture capital would be purely a manager's schedule game, wouldn't you? Constant meetings.
Typically, yes. That's the stereotype, and often the reality. Meetings with founders, potential investments, partners, portfolio companies. It's very meeting heavy.
But YC does things differently.
Apparently so. They, or at least key figures there, like the sources mentioned, RTM, Trevor, and Jessica, they historically operated much more on the maker schedule.
Really? How does that even work when you're advising hundreds of startups?
Well, they have a specific strategy, office hours.
Okay, I've heard that term. How do they use it?
They dedicate specific clustered blocks of time several times a week, purely from meeting with the founders they've funded. And here's the crucial part.
What's that?
They schedule these office hours deliberately at the end of their workday.
Ah. So they protect the bulk of their day for their own focused work, the making part, and then batch all the meetings together later on.
Exactly. The meetings happen, they're necessary,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't fragment the core working time. It's contained.
And the founders wanting those meetings are opting into that specific time, knowing it's interrupting their flow too, presumably because the meeting's valuable enough.
Right. It's a very intentional structure. It respects the maker time while still allowing for that crucial interaction. It creates a predictable rhythm.
That's clever. It reminds me of one of the sources mentioned a personal strategy from way back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
This idea of having 2 work days, programming, the deep maker work, happened late at night when there were 0 interruptions.
Okay, classic coder schedule.
Right. And then the daytime was for the business stuff, the calls, the meetings, things that fit more naturally into a manager-style schedule.
So creating dedicated zones almost.
Yeah.
Maker time and manager time kept separate. It highlights that need for boundaries.
Definitely. And this relates to another concept, speculative meeting.
Ah, yes. The let's grab coffee and chat meeting.
Exactly. For someone on a manager schedule, these seem almost free, right? You have a gap. Someone suggests a meeting to explore, synergies or whatever. Easy. Yes. Low cost.
Yeah, maybe even beneficial.
That's-
Good networking, quick info exchange, fits right into their fragmented day.
But flip that. For someone on a maker's schedule, that same quick coffee chat can be incredibly costly.
Hugely costly.
Right.
Because it's probably smack in the middle of one of those precious 3-4 hour focus blocks.
So the maker faces this dilemma. Either sacrifice a huge chunk of productive time for something speculative, or
risk seeming uncooperative, maybe even rude, by saying no to what seems like a casual request. Because the requester often assumes everyone's schedule is as flexible as theirs.
it's a real tightrope, as the source material put it, especially since, the manager's schedule is often seen as the default in the business world. Pushing back can be misinterpreted.
Yeah. There's an unspoken assumption sometimes. But the crucial point isn't that makers hate all meetings. That's not it at all.
Right, they get that collaboration is necessary.
Of course. They're willing to meet when it's important, when it's planned. What they're really looking for is just understanding, awareness from people on the manager's schedule.
An acknowledgement that interrupting that focus time has a real significant cost. It's not just 30 minutes out of the day. It can blow up half a day's worth of deep work momentum.
Precisely. It really just boils down to recognizing these 2 fundamentally different ways of operating are both valid and necessary.
And just having that awareness, that language manager versus maker, that's the vital first step. It allows for better planning, less friction, more respect for different work styles.
Absolutely. So maybe for everyone listening, it's worth taking a second to think about your own work. Where do you fall on this spectrum?
Yeah, do you thrive on that back and forth, the quick shifts? Or do you really need those long, quiet stretches to do your best thinking?
And critically, how well does your actual schedule, day to day, align with that natural rhythm? Is it supporting you or fighting against you?
And maybe here's a final thought to mull over. We live in a world now that seems to demand both deep, focused, innovative work and constant seamless collaboration. These 2 schedules are often in tension.
A real modern work paradox.
So how can we as individuals, as teams, maybe even as organizations, get better at navigating that tension? What small adjustments could you make personally starting tomorrow? Maybe to protect your own focus, or maybe to be more mindful of how your scheduling impacts others.
That's the big question, isn't it? How do we build work cultures that truly respect both kinds of time? Something to think about.